When I was 10, I met a strange boy who appeared out of nowhere and then mysteriously disappeared. How do I find him? So, I was about 10 or 11 years old when he first appeared. It was the middle of summer, and my friends and I were swimming in a lake on one of my parents' fields. I grew up in a small farming town with no more than 200 people, so everyone knew each other. There were 2 schools in town, one for boys and one for girls. I don't know why they separated them by gender, and as far as I know, they're now combined, but that's how it was back then. I'll tell you how I remember it, although my friend remembers it a little differently. So, my friends and I, there were maybe 4 of us, were swimming in the lake on the edge of my parents' field. It was about a 15-minute walk from my house. We played there for a while when we heard someone call out to us. We turned around and saw a boy standing on the shore of the lake, completely naked. When we noticed him, he shouted out if he could play with us. He looked about the same age as us, maybe a little older, but not much. He was very pale, practically white. I remember being struck by his bright green eyes, and even a little envious of them. He also had light, almost white, shoulder-length hair like Dr. Malfoy's. My friends and I exchanged glances and said, yes, and he came into the lake with us. None of us knew him, which was weird because we'd all lived in this tiny town all our lives and knew literally everyone there. He introduced himself as Richard, but said he preferred to be called Richie. So that's what we did. I remember asking Richie where he was from, but he always changed the subject and never answered directly. Anyway, after some more playing in the lake, I invited Richie to my house for dinner. He immediately said he'd love to come, and my friend said, "Don't you think you should ask your mum first?" To which Richie replied something like, "Oh, she won't mind. Remember, I said that Richie was completely naked." Now, that didn't strike me as odd at the time. In fact, I'm pretty sure we all were naked. My friends and I were kids and we used to go skinny dipping in Lake naked. So when he showed up like that, it didn't really strike me as odd. But what did strike me was, when we got out of the lake, dried ourselves off, and got dressed, Richie didn't have any clothes. That struck me as really odd. But he said something like, "Oh, I guess I forgot to bring my clothes," which again, was really odd. Well, how can you forget your clothes? I wasn't sure how my parents would react to me bringing home a naked boy. So I gave him my underwear and a shirt so he could at least have something to wear. But yeah, that did strike me as odd. My friends went home, and Richie and I went to my place. My dad asked, "Where are his clothes?" I made something up on the spot. I think I said that his clothes were wet, and we left them in the sun to dry. I gave him a pair of pants. We sat down to dinner, and I remember he ate 3 or 4 helpings. As I said, Richie was a very skinny boy. I was small and skinny then too, but he was even skinnier than me. So I didn't understand how he could fit so much food. Richie was very polite and sweet to everyone while he was with us. After dinner, I took him to my room, and we started playing on my Nintendo 64. He had never seen one before and was absolutely delighted. At the time, I thought he was surprised because the console was so old. After all, it was 2010, but my family was poor, and that was all I had. It was getting dark, and I asked him if he wanted to spend the night. He was very happy and said, "Yes." I checked with my parents, but I already knew they wouldn't mind. They were both very drunk. So we continued playing on the H64 until late at night. After a while, I said it was time to go to bed because I was tired, but he didn't seem tired at all. Richie asked if he could take a shower because we'd been running around the fields all day and he was all dirty. While he was showering, I made the bed and turned on a movie on the TV to watch before bed, and I climbed into bed. About 5 minutes later, Richie came out of the bathroom completely naked again. I asked, "Did you come out of the bathroom like that?" He said yes, and acted like it was completely normal. I thought it was weird, but I didn't say anything. He climbed into my bed. I asked if he wanted pajamas, but he said it was too hot. To be honest, I remember it being a really hot day. I turned on a movie about Scooter, and he was absolutely delighted. He knew nothing about it. It didn't seem all that strange. But looking back, I realize he knew absolutely nothing about pop culture. We lived in a small town and were a bit behind the times, but we still knew the basics. I slept for quite a while the next day, but when I woke up, Richie wasn't in my room. I asked my mum if she'd seen him, and she said he'd left early that morning after his parents called our house. How they knew he was there or who to call, I still don't understand. Resh took some shorts from my room because my mum said he couldn't leave naked. I was a little upset that he'd left without even saying goodbye or leaving any way to contact him. But a couple of days later, he showed up again while my friends and I were swimming in the lake. This time, he had clothes on, but as far as I remember, only underwear and a shirt with no pants, which again, struck me as odd. Over the next year, we became very close. We were like brothers. Over that year, I asked more than once if I could go to his house or meet his family, but every time I asked him something personal, he'd act awkward and not want to talk, or would simply change the subject. I could tell it made him uncomfortable, so I didn't push it. He just said he was homeschooled. I thought it was cool because for me, that meant no school. Like I said, we became really close that year. I felt like he was more than a friend. It's hard to explain, like my soulmates. We became close quickly, and I felt like I could tell him anything and he would always support me. He helped me through tough times and definitely inspired me to be a better person. It was like he sensed when I was going through a hard time. For example, when my grandmother died, I went out into the fields to cry because I didn't want to do it in front of my family. I sat down in some random place and then Richie appeared. He sat next to me and said a few words that really helped me then. When I asked how he found me, he said he was just out for a walk, and then, after a while, he just disappeared. A little over a year had passed since he first appeared at the lake. That was around September of the following year, so about a year and 2 or 3 months had passed. He never came back, never said goodbye, never left a trace. I was terribly depressed. I missed him so much. I wandered through the fields looking for him and sat by the lake where we first met, hoping he would appear again, but he never did. I still don't know what happened to him. I tried searching for him on social media, but to no avail. And since he barely shared anything about his life, I have no leads. I asked my parents what they remembered about him. They said they remembered him as strange and, at first, weren't sure if we should even be friends, especially since he liked to walk around naked whenever he felt like it. But they also said that we were inseparable and where I was, he was. They remember me being killed after he stopped showing up. They even considered calling the police about his disappearance, but they never did, although I really wish they did. It's probably unlikely, but if you're reading this, Richie, please contact me. I'd really like to talk to you again and get answers to all the weird questions about you. It's entirely possible that there was nothing paranormal about Richie, but it certainly seemed very strange. Update 1. I'm back at my parents' for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to search the house for any photos of Richie to share here. Although, considering I have 7 older brothers and a lot of family photos, I'm not sure I'll find anything else. We have a celebration at our local church to celebrate the end of the school year. As one of the commenters suggested, I'm going to go to the coffee mornings where all the older people in the village come, even if it means getting up at 7 o'clock am. I'll ask people if anyone remembers Richie. I'll update this thread tomorrow if I find anything. Thanks everyone for your help. Update 2. Today I asked around at our church, but no one seemed to remember Richie. I was starting to lose hope, but apparently word had spread around the village that I was looking for someone, because an older woman, let's call her Sharon, whom I know but have never really spoken to, approached me. She said she might know Rich's second aunt on his mother's side. She would try to find her contact information for me so I could contact her and see if she had any information about Richie. Sharon said that if Richie really was from the family, she thought he was. He lived in a cottage about an hour and a quarter's walk from the village. The cottage was secluded, with no neighbors. Sharon doesn't know why they disappeared, as she wasn't close to Rich's aunt. I hope this is good news, and I'm one step closer to finding Richie again. I'll update this thread if any new information comes to light. I really hope this possible aunt is still alive and hasn't changed her contact information. Wish me luck. Update 3. I contacted Rich's possible second cousin. I'll abbreviate it to DT, but to no avail. I called the number Sharon gave me several times. No one responded, even though I left a message explaining who I was. I also sent a letter, first class, to the address Sharon gave me. It should arrive tomorrow or the day after. Hopefully DT still lives at that address and I can get some answers. In the letter, I also explained why I wanted to contact her and left my phone number in case she finds it easier to call than to write a reply. I'll update the thread as soon as there's anything new. Oh yeah, one more thing. I went to the cottage where Sharon said Richie might have lived. The cottage is abandoned and in disrepair. It looks like he really could have lived there, but the atmosphere there was truly creepy. Update 4. I received a reply from DT. Let's call her Jane. Someone suggested I check if her number was linked to any apps like WhatsApp. It was, so I messaged Jane. There, it worked. She responded pretty quickly. After I described Rich to her, she said quite confidently that she was indeed related to him. And that's where things took a turn for the worse. Jane hasn't been in touch with Rich's family for years, but she has his older sister's phone number. I didn't even know he had any siblings. Jane hinted that contacting Rich's sister wouldn't help me find what I was looking for. I fear the worst. It seems something has happened to Richie. Jane said her sister would be able to tell me more, gave me her number, and ended the conversation. I'm incredibly tense. Before writing to Rich's sister, this may be the end of the search that has taken me so long, but I'm afraid it's not the ending I dreamed of. I'll update the thread as soon as I know more. Update 5. First of all, I want to thank everyone who helped me through this process and helped me find closure with my childhood friend. It's been a difficult road. For years, I've been searching for answers to Rich's whereabouts. Unfortunately, the news is bad. Deep down, I dreaded this outcome and perhaps avoided searching to avoid facing the same outcome. With the help of all of you and the many helpful comments, I found a distant relative of Rich's who connected me with his older sister. I didn't even know he had a sister. For the sake of clarity, I'll call her Sarah. Sarah helped me understand his speech and strange behavior, his reluctance to show me his home, and his disappearance. Sarah and Richie both survived abuse at the hands of their father. Their father suffered from severe mental illness and drug addiction for most of his adult life. He was terrified of the outside world and kept his children in isolation. According to Sarah, her father was convinced the world was about to end, that the devil was going to take over his mind and body, and that Jesus told him, the only way to save yourself and your family is to stay away from people. Sarah explained that her father wasn't often physically abusive, which probably makes things a little easier. Richie and his family moved frequently as children, never staying in one place for long because their father was afraid the devil would find them. Sarah said they were often moved in the middle of the night without warning. She doesn't remember exactly when they were taken from my town. This explains why Richie appeared out of nowhere and then disappeared 15 months later. Richie died at 15, approximately 2 to 12 years after he disappeared from my town. It was hard for Zara to share the details, and I didn't want to push, but it seems Richie did this to himself. Sarah said he often talked about me and the times we spent together, and that all he wanted was to come back and find me. Unfortunately, he never did. She admitted that she thought I was his imaginary friend. She doesn't know how Rich managed to sneak out of the house to see me, but she said their father would lock them in their rooms for days, sometimes even weeks. Sarah told me she had some of Rich's journals, and I remember him writing things down sometimes. She offered to send them to me, which was incredibly touching of her. She said a lot of the entries were about me, our time together, his dreams of finding me again so we could escape somewhere together. She thought I was an imaginary friend all this time. It was incredibly bittersweet to hear that. I can't wait to read his journals, even though I know it will be very hard. She said she was glad Richie was able to leave a mark on someone's life. I want people to know what a huge impact he had on mine. I want everyone to know Richie, to know what an amazing, kind, and beautiful person he was. This post is very hard to write. Deep down, I know. I avoided searching for Richie for so long precisely because I feared this outcome. Sarah told me much more, but I decided not to share everything for the sake of her privacy. She's safe now, far from her father, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. Once again, I want to express my gratitude to all of you who helped and supported me emotionally. Thank you so much. Richie, I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't help. I'm sorry I didn't see the signs that you were in danger. I hope you can forgive me. You were the only true friend I ever had, and it's incredibly hard for me to write these words. It makes me sick to think that I didn't do more. Richie, know that you saved me so many times in my life. In my darkest moments, your memories held me together. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you the way you were there for me. I love you so much. Richie, update 6. I thought I'd share an update on how I'm doing now and how Sarah is doing. It still hurts me to think about Richie and how I could and should have helped him, but I couldn't save him. It's really hard to remember the past. I barely have any friends. I suffer from severe anxiety, and I just wish Richie were here with me. Sarah and I talk occasionally, but not as often as I'd like. We met in person once, and it was great. I felt like Rich's story touched a lot of people, so I decided to share it. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has them. Update 7. My post received a lot of responses, and I'm trying my best to answer as many comments as possible. I didn't think it would get so much attention, especially considering the previous updates weren't long enough to answer several of the most frequently asked questions at once. Yes, I'm currently in therapy, which I started recently along with medication, as I've been suffering from severe anxiety for a long time. I'm currently waiting for Sarah's permission before publishing any of Rich's diary entries. I think she should have the final say. Does she want this to be online? No, I'm not writing a book. And Richie, no, this is not an advertisement for a book. If anyone should write a book about Rich's life, it would be Sarah. She has no desire to share her story. She prefers to leave the past in the past. And frankly, I understand her. It breaks my heart to see so many people writing that they knew their Richie or that they themselves were Richie. I understand that so many children even today remain unnoticed, living in difficult conditions and suffering abuse, and there is no one nearby to help them. It hurts to think that so many are no longer with us, although they could be alive. I am glad that Richie was able to leave a mark on the hearts of so many people here. Forgive me if I do not respond to some of the comments. There are many, and some of them are too difficult for me to react to. I can tell you 1,000 times that I should not feel guilt, and intellectually I understand this, but it is very difficult not to feel it. And it is very difficult to hear that I did everything I could now that Richie is no longer here. Perhaps this sounds like whining or ungrateful. In fact, I am grateful for all the love I have received from you. I'm just not entirely sure I deserve it. Well, that's where this sad story ends. Unfortunately, there were no more updates from the author. And what's more, he deleted those posts. Honestly, I was very touched by this story. Perhaps you noticed. I think it's one of the most touching stories on our channel, because it's always very sad to lose your old good friends, and when you can never contact them again. It's doubly sad, especially when you find out after the fact, many years later, that they had such a background. And yes, honestly, I would have felt a little guilty too. Why didn't I ask him? I should have insisted, asked him somehow. I could have helped him. Yes, of course, it's very, very sad. And it's a shame that his parents didn't see those signs, that he was naked. Why? I could have put some pressure on him, found out what his problems were. But what am I talking about? I probably wouldn't have been as vigilant myself as I should have been. Unfortunately, most people are often indifferent. And again, I don't blame anyone for this, because I'm like that myself. What do you think you would have done if you were the author of this story as a child? What would you have done if you were his parents? Let me know in the comments. It would be interesting to read. In the meantime, thank you for listening to this story to the end. Watch our previous videos, which you can find here. And be sure to subscribe to our channel if for some reason you haven't already. Good luck!